The disappearance and rescue of Paisley Joan Schultis. Moment. A little girl was safe inside her family's home. The next, she was simply gone. No broken windows, no signs of struggle, no witnesses, just a quiet disappearance that stunned a small New York town. Days turned to months, then years. The case went cold, but police never gave up. And when they finally knocked on the right door, what they found hidden inside sent chills through the entire nation. This is a story that proves some secrets don't stay buried forever. On July 13, 2019, 4-year-old Paisley Joan Schultis was supposed to be picked up by Child Protective Services. Her parents had lost custody, and she was meant to start a new life with a legal guardian alongside her older sister. It's unclear why authorities were taking the kids. Her parents, Kimberly Cooper and Kirk Schultis Jr., had vanished with her into thin air. The older sister, who had been at school during the planned pickup, would go home that day to find her little sister missing and her parents nowhere to be found. What started as a custody case had suddenly become something much darker. The morning Paisley disappeared, neighbors in Cayuga Heights noticed nothing unusual. It was as if the family had simply evaporated, leaving behind only questions and a sister who would spend the next 2.5 years wondering if she would ever see Paisley again. Police immediately issued alerts. They had reason to believe that Kimberly Cooper, who didn't have custody rights, had taken her daughter and fled. The initial investigation suggested they might have headed to Philadelphia. Officers searched, followed leads, and questioned family members. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. Paisley's father, Kirk Schultis Jr., claimed he had no idea where his daughter was. He told police that Cooper had taken Paisley and run away to Philadelphia. He seemed genuinely distraught, insisting he was just as desperate to find his little girl as everyone else. But was he telling the truth? As the investigation deepened, one location kept coming up in tips and leads: a house in Saugerties, New York, about 160 miles east of where Paisley had vanished. It was the home of Kirk Schultis Sr., the girl's grandfather. What investigators didn't know was that they were about to begin a cat-and-mouse game that would stretch their patience. The first time police knocked on the grandfather's door in Saugerties, they were met with confusion and denial. Kirk Schultis Sr. seemed genuinely puzzled about why they were there. He claimed he hadn't seen Paisley since she went missing. He insisted he had no idea where she could be, but something didn't feel right. The house in Saugerties looked ordinary from the outside, ordinary from the outside. A caution didn't feel right, that something didn't feel right. The house in Saugerties looked ordinary from the outside. A coda, she could be, but something didn't feel right. Typical family home in a quiet neighborhood where children usually played in yards and rode bicycles. Down the street. But neighbor Annette Rolson had noticed something strange over the years. "They're as normal can be," she would later tell reporters. "Except for the fact that they've got playground equipment out there. And I've never seen a child out there in 12 years. 12 years of living next door. And she had never seen children playing on the swings or slides that sat unused in the Schultis family's backyard." She remembered asking herself repeatedly, how come there are never any kids? The question was more haunting than she could have imagined. As months passed after Paisley's disappearance, police continued receiving tips about the Saugerties house. Each time, they would make the 160-mile journey from Cayuga Heights, hoping this would be the visit that brought Paisley home, but each visit ended the same way. Kirk Schultis Sr. and Jr. would greet officers at the door with practiced politeness, but there was always an edge to their behavior. Sometimes they were openly hostile, accusing police of harassment and badgering. Other times, they would put on a show of cooperation. "Oh no, you can come in and look around," they would say. "There's nobody here. The child's not here." But their cooperation had limits. Officers were given what police later described as limited access. They could look in some rooms, but not others. They could check the main floor, but were denied entry to the basement and bedroom areas. There was always an excuse, always a reason why certain parts of the house were off limits. What made it worse was that the family seemed to enjoy the game. They would insist that police should be out looking for Paisley instead of bothering them. They positioned themselves as concerned family members who were being unfairly targeted, while the real kidnappers got away. After nearly a dozen visits over 2 years, investigators began to suspect they were being played. But without concrete evidence or a search warrant, their hands were tied. In the American justice system, hunches and suspicions aren't enough. They needed facts. Meanwhile, Paisley's older sister was growing up without her little sister. The legal guardian who had taken custody was doing their best to provide a stable home. Birthdays came and went. Christmas mornings felt incomplete. Every milestone in the older sister's life was marked by the absence of the little girl who should have been there to share it. And somewhere, investigators believed, Paisley was living a life that no 6-year-old should have to live. One bedroom was clearly meant for a child. It even had Paisley written on the wall. When police had asked about this room during their limited visits, the family had a ready explanation. They claimed they had set it up in case Paisley should ever return. It was a touching story, grandparents holding on to hope, keeping a room ready for their missing granddaughter. But the truth was far more sinister. The basement apartment was being lived in. The bed showed signs of recent use. There were clothing items scattered about, personal belongings that suggested ongoing occupancy. Someone was calling this underground space home. But the most ingenious part of the deception wasn't the basement apartment itself. It was what had been built to complement it. Then, on February 14th, 2022, Valentine's Day, everything changed. Police received a tip that was different from all the others. This wasn't just another, "I think I saw something" call. This was specific, detailed, and credible. The caller provided information that could be corroborated, facts that police could verify. Chief Sinagra later described this tip as fresh and factual. Unlike the previous leads that had been based on suspicion or hearsay, this information was concrete enough to convince a judge to issue a search warrant. The wheels of justice began turning quickly. At 4 p.m. on February 14th, uniformed officers took positions outside the Saugerties' house. Their job was simple but crucial: make sure no one left the property while detectives prepared the paperwork for the search warrant. The family inside would have seen the police cars. They would have known something was different about this visit. For the first time in over 2 years, they wouldn't be able to control the narrative or limit police access to their home. By 8:06 p.m., the search warrant was ready. When officers knocked on the door this time, they didn't ask for permission to enter. They didn't negotiate about which rooms they could search. For the first time since Paisley's disappearance, investigators had complete access to the house. The homeowner's response was the same as always: denial. He claimed he had no idea where Paisley was. He insisted he hadn't seen her since she was reported missing in 2019. Even faced with a search warrant, he maintained the charade. But this time, his words didn't matter. Detectives spread throughout the house, systematically searching every room, every closet, every possible hiding place. When they reached the basement, they found the apartment-like setup they had been denied access to for 2 years. The child's bedroom with Paisley on the wall no longer seemed like a touching memorial to a missing granddaughter. With a search warrant in hand, it looked like evidence of ongoing occupancy. But where was Paisley? Detective Eric Thiel had been searching for over an hour when something caught his attention. He was examining the wooden staircase that led to the basement when he noticed something odd about its construction. The steps didn't look quite right. There was something about the way they were built that bothered him, though he couldn't immediately put his finger on what it was. Trusting his instincts, Detective Thiel pulled out his flashlight and began examining the staircase more closely. He pointed the beam through a crack between the wooden steps, looking for Something, he wasn't sure. Then he saw at a glimpse of fabric that looked like a blanket. His heart must have started racing. After 2.5 years of searching, after dozens of false leads and dead ends, could this finally be the breakthrough they had been looking for? Detective Field called for tools and backup. As other officers gathered around the staircase, they began the delicate process of disassembling the wooden steps. The house felt eerily quiet. No one spoke above a whisper. Everyone understood that they might be moments away from either solving one of the area's most frustrating missing child cases or discovering something far worse. As they removed the first few steps, the officers could see more clearly into the hidden space beneath. There were blankets, a pillow, clothing items. It was clearly a hiding place that had been used multiple times. Then, as they removed more steps, Detective Field saw something that would stay with him for the rest of his career. A pair of tiny feet. The feet belonged to a small child who was huddled in the dark, cramped space beneath the stairs. Next to the child was an adult woman. After 962 days of searching, they had found Paisley Joan Schultis. Someone had carefully constructed a secret compartment under the wooden staircase leading to the basement. It was a hiding space that would have required planning, materials, and significant construction work. This wasn't something built in desperation during a moment of panic. This was premeditated. The compartment was small, dark, and cramped. It was cold and often wet. For an adult, it would have been uncomfortable. For even a short period. For a small child, it would have been terrifying. During those dozen police visits over 2.5 years, investigators now believe Paisley and her mother were hiding in this space every single time. They would have heard the footsteps of police officers walking up and down the very stairs that concealed them. They would have listened to the conversations happening just feet away as officers questioned the family about Paisley's whereabouts. The psychological impact on a child in such circumstances is almost unimaginable. What was Paisley told about the police officers who were searching for her? What was she told about why she had to hide? What was she told about the world outside? That basement? Police Chief Sinagra would later wonder aloud about this. The question that needs to be answered is what she was told by her parents that would keep her so still and quiet while the cops are walking up and down the steps. While they're taking the steps apart, he said. They lied to us for 2 years, he added, including the father stating that he had no idea where his daughter was. The silence that Paisley maintained during those visits suggests a level of fear or conditioning that speaks to the psychological complexity of her situation. A normal 4, 5, or 6-year-old child would likely have made noise, asked questions, or shown some sign of the commotion happening above their hiding place. But the moment of discovery was not the joyful reunion that one might expect. Instead, it was eerily silent as officers helped Paisley and her mother out of their hiding place. The little girl's reaction broke their hearts. She was not relieved to be found. She was terrified. When Paisley emerged from her hiding place, she was no longer the 4-year-old who had disappeared from Cayuga Heights in July 2019. She was now 6 years old, though she looked younger than her age. She had spent crucial developmental years hidden away from the world, cut off from normal childhood experiences. The first priority was her health. Paramedics examined her carefully, checking for signs of physical abuse or medical neglect. Remarkably, considering the circumstances, Paisley appeared to be in good physical health. She was clean, fed, and showed no obvious signs of physical mistreatment. But her emotional state was another matter entirely. Paisley was upset and concerned when police first approached her. According to Chief Sinagra, the sight of several heavily armed officers would have been traumatic for any child. But for one who had been taught to fear police for over 2 years, it must have been terrifying. The officers recognized this and tried to make the experience as gentle as possible. Instead of rushing her to the police station, They took time to let her adjust to the situation. They spoke to her softly, tried to calm her fears, and explained that they were there to help her. As they prepared to transport Paisley to police headquarters for a medical examination and to begin the process of reuniting her with her legal guardian and sister, something unexpected happened that would become one of the most touching details of the entire case. Driving through Saugerties, Paisley looked out the window and saw a McDonald's restaurant. Her reaction was immediate and telling. She became excited and mentioned that she remembered having McDonald's a long time ago. This simple moment revealed so much about what Paisley's life had been like for the past 2.5 years. McDonald's, a simple happy meal, was something special, something from before her world became a basement apartment and a hiding space under the stairs. The detectives didn't hesitate. They turned the car around, went through the McDonald's drive-thru, and bought Paisley a happy meal, and she was fine after that. Chief Sinagra later recalled, it was a small gesture, but it represented something profound, the beginning of Paisley's return to a normal childhood. For the first time in over 2 years, she was able to enjoy a simple pleasure without having to hide or be quiet about it. But even as Paisley enjoyed her McDonald's meal, the investigation was revealing the full scope of what she had endured. She had not attended school for 2.5 years. While other children her age were learning to read, making friends, and experiencing the normal milestones of childhood, Paisley had been living in secret in a basement, hidden away from the world. She had been separated from her older sister during some of the most formative years of both their lives. The bond between siblings, especially when they're the only family each other has, is irreplaceable. That bond had been severed by the very people who were supposed to protect it. Perhaps most heartbreaking of all, Paisley had been taught to fear the very people who were trying to help her. Police officers, who should represent safety and rescue to a child in danger, had been portrayed as threats to be hidden from. The psychological impact of this conditioning would likely require years of therapy to overcome. How do you teach a 6-year-old that the people she was taught to fear are actually the ones trying to keep her safe? How do you rebuild trust that was systematically destroyed? It was later learned that custody was granted to the maternal grandmother in 2019 after she raised concerns about Paisley and her sister's late-night schedule with their parents at their job on construction sites and alleged drug use. The babysitter, Joan Schultis, owned his own paving company upstate, and that his wife would often work with him. She said the parents couldn't afford childcare for Paisley and her older sister, and would often take the children on job sites until close to midnight. Online records show that Schultis had criminal troubles in 2019. He was arrested in North Carolina for methamphetamines while the babysitter said the family was on vacation. North Carolina prosecutors say that Schultis Jr. was charged with methamphetamine and heroin possession. He pleaded guilty to a lesser charge of drug paraphernalia and served 8 days in county jail. I understand as a parent, no one wants to lose custody of their children, said Joseph Sinagra of Saugerties Police. But sometimes the right thing for us to do for our children is the hardest thing to do for our children. What they should have done in 2019 when custody was granted to a third party, they should have relinquished the child rather than run and hide. Kimberly Cooper, Paisley's mother, was charged with custodial interference in the 2nd degree and endangering the welfare of a child. She was held in Ulster County Jail not just for the new charges, but because of an outstanding warrant from family court. Kirk Schultis Jr., Paisley's father, was charged with custodial interference in the 1st degree, a felony, and endangering the welfare of a child. Despite being the child's biological father, his role in the elaborate deception made his charges more serious than those against Cooper. Kirk Schultis Sr., the grandfather whose house had served as the hiding place, faced the same charges as his son. At 57 years old, he had become the architect of a scheme that had kept his granddaughter hidden for over 2 years. All 3 were ordered by the court to stay away from Paisley. The house in Saugerties, which had seemed so normal to neighbors, was revealed to be the center of an elaborate deception. The playground equipment that neighbor Annette Rolson had wondered about for years now made tragic sense. It had been there for a child who could never play on it, at least not where anyone could see. But the most important outcome of that February night was not the arrests or the charges. It was the reunion between two sisters who had been separated for over 2 years. Paisley was released to her legal guardian and reunited with her older sister at an undisclosed location. Police reported that Paisley recognized her sister immediately, suggesting that despite everything she had been through, some bonds had remained strong. Chief Sinagra noted that by the day after her rescue, Paisley was in very good spirits. Children are remarkably resilient, and 6-year-old Paisley was already beginning to show signs of the healing process, but questions remained. "We don't know what Paisley lived through for the past 2 years, Chief Sinagra said, and we don't know what kind of damage may have been done because of the conditions that she had to live under." The case of Paisley Joan Schultis reveals the lengths that some people will go to in order to defy court orders and custody decisions. It shows how easily a child can become a pawn in adult conflicts, and how the desire to protect a child can become a form of harm itself. It also demonstrates the persistence and dedication of law enforcement officers who refuse to give up on a missing child, even when the case seemed hopeless. Detective Eric Thiel's instinct about that staircase, Chief Sinagra's refusal to accept the family's denials, and the anonymous tipster who finally provided the breakthrough all played crucial roles in bringing Paisley home. Today, Paisley is learning what it means to be a normal child again. She's attending school, playing with her sister, and discovering a world that extends far beyond basement apartments and hiding places under stairs. The secret under the stairs has been revealed. The lies that sustained it for over 2 years have been exposed. And most importantly, a little girl who had almost become a ghost has been returned to the world of the living. In the end, love isn't about hiding someone away from the world. True love means helping them find their place in it.